Welcome to another episode of Social Media Church. My name is Matt Williams. I'm your host, and we believe two things here with this podcast. The first one is that the people of God is the church, and the church is the people of God. And we want to equip the church, the people of God, to use digital media and social media as ministry, because Jesus calls us to go where the people are. People are in digital spaces. And so as the church, as the people of God, how do we go there so that we can help as many people as possible find and follow Jesus? And today I'm super excited because we have Melissa Gepford as our guest. She's a friend. We've worked together on multiple projects, and she's done a lot of stuff in the digital media space. We're going to dig into that. She works with young people and thinks a lot about how does the church use digital media specifically to reach young people. And so, Melissa, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. So for our listeners, Melissa, give us an overview of who are you and what do you do? Because you have a day job, you're a serial entrepreneur. Give us a picture of what you do.
Yeah, so I am an ordained deacon in the United Methodist Church, and I live in the Kansas City area. My day job is called the Intergenerational Discipleship Coordinator for the Great Plains United Methodist Conference. And what that means is I resource kids ministries, youth ministries, and young adult ministries for all of the United Methodist churches in Kansas and Nebraska. There's about 700 of them. So I serve as a consultant, writer, curriculum developer, and I also work with the high school students in a leadership development program that I created called Leadership Lab. It's a badge system, so it's kind of gamified where they go on these quests to learn about and live out traits of a great disciple and a great leader. And then once they finish a quest, they earn a badge. And once they earn 10 badges, then they're eligible to go on a pilgrimage overseas. So I just took some students and their mentors to Greece this past January. And so that's been a really fun and exciting project and experiment to do with young people. So that's my day job. And then on the side, I consult, I speak. I've done a number of projects that center children and their families. So you and I get to work on Sacred Roots Network, which is an amazing Lilly-funded project that helps create resources and networking for parents of littles ages 0 to 3 and how to help them incorporate spiritual practice into their daily rhythms. So that's been a lot of fun to be in that digital media space and work with parents and caregivers there. I also created a platform called Dandelion Marketplace, which is purely digital. It is a marketplace similar to Etsy or Teachers Pay Teachers, where progressive ministry leaders, specifically in kids and youth ministry spaces, can create a storefront. A lot of folks out there write their own curriculum and content because it's hard to find the stuff that you need. So this is a place where they can upload and sell their own curriculum and content. And so you can get kids ministry, youth ministry curriculum, you can get worship resources. So we're starting to expand into other resourcing as well. But those are a few of the little things that I've got going on in my life. I'm also a mom and a wife. So, we're just hanging on. We're having a blast.
You're not bored.
No, I'm not bored. That's
yeah.
I'm not bored.
That's awesome. So obviously, we're friends. We've been working together for a while. And so where I want to start is you spend a lot of time thinking about not just the church generally, but how does the church reach young people? Mm-hmm. You're equipping ministry leaders with kids and students and young adults. You're a mom yourself of a kid that you want to be plugged into the church and to know Jesus. So let's zoom out high level, and then we'll kind of work our way, towards some practical nuts and bolts stuff.
Sure.
So when you think about the church in 2050, so it's 2025 as we record this. When you think about the church in 2050 and how we need to reach young people for the church to even exist in 2050, how do you think about the church and reaching young people in the context of social and digital media?
That's so good. Matt, I love the way that you've talked about digital media as the front door into a local church. And I think that's really important to think about when we're thinking about reaching young people. It is just the front door. I think that there's this misnomer or misunderstanding about young folks that they only want digital spaces. And whatever part of their life, a lot of them are gamers and, they're able to create these real and authentic connections in the digital world. It's not always the only space that young people want to engage in. And so I do think it's important for us to continue thinking about digital media strategy as the front door into something incarnational. Thanks for bringing up 2050. I actually got to be part of a series of interviews of high school students and college students a couple of years ago. And we interviewed some kids and students in Kansas and Nebraska about what are their hopes for the Church of 2050, because the reality is they're going to be here. And some of us that are, doing this work now, depending on your age and how long we've been here, we may not. And so the decisions that we make today impact them the longest. And so it's really, really crucial for us to get their thoughts and their hopes and dreams about what the future looks like, because it's for them. And so we got to do that work. We interviewed we had a series of interviews. This was with our cabinet, which if you're in United Methodist spaces, you know what that means. It was the bishop and then some district superintendents of our area, where we kind of like got together and first like had some predictions of what they might say. And the prediction was they're going to want online church. And so we should probably get their confirmation of this and start investing in like creating an online church. And so then we started, conducting these interviews, and no one said anything about online church.
Really?
No one said anything about it. Their hopes and dreams for the future of the church was so rooted in local. It was rooted in neighborhood. It was rooted in like an incarnational way that the church and the people in the church show up in the community. They wanted to be a part of a like deeply rooted church in the neighborhood that knows the people, that knows the needs and the gifts, that partners with other entities, that serves the community. And at the same time, there was conversation about how the digital space would, of course, be part of that. And so I think the distinction between this is a generalized thing between, the differences between generations is like for you and me, millennials, we see like digital media, digital ministry, digital strategy as tools. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me like younger folks see digital spaces, digital ministry as an extension of self. And so, like, their online profiles are an extension of themselves. Yeah. It's part of who they are, and it's integrated in a different way than I think older generations view digital tools. And so I think it's really crucial for us to start thinking in terms like that for local churches. What is the digital space? How is that an extension of the local church itself? Not a replacement of, and not just a tool, but an extension of self as that front door, as that mechanism to invite folks into conversation, to invite folks into really, truly like a discernment process of whether or not they're wanting to engage in real life.
So what I hear you saying is, like, with the young people that you're working with, they're not seeing, it's not digital versus in person in their mind. It's just life. Life includes a digital element and it includes a physical element, and those things aren't necessarily at odds. They're not replacing one another. It's just all of it just rolls up into their lived experience. Is that a fair way to capture that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's an integration. So, my family, we went to a college game the other day, a football game. And, they had like up on the screens were everywhere, all the things. There's hashtags, there's ways that you can upload photos into this like portal where they might like randomly choose a couple of pictures to put up on the screen. We were able to vote on what song the dance team danced to in third quarter. How cool is that? Cool. Right. Yeah. But it was such a visceral and incarnational experience of the football game, right? All the sights, all the sounds, the smells, the whole thing, right? The food. it was that tangible and incarnational experience. And the digital aspect was part of it. It was integrated into the experience. And it was funny because Finn, my 7-year-old, he was like all about doing the voting, I couldn't have cared less about that. And I think that that's a really interesting, generational observation to have. I mean, he's in first grade and they use technology on a daily basis to play games to learn. So there's a level of gamification in their lives that happens all of the time in all sorts of spaces. And it's digitally focused and centered.
So I'm thinking about Leadership Lab.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about the fact that, young people don't see digital versus in person. They just see it as part of life. There's elements of both, and it's all just part of their experience. And what I'm thinking about with Leadership Lab is you're working directly with young people, trying to figure out how do I share content with them in ways that A, they have access to, B, hopefully that they're actually going to, get through it and remember what you're trying to share. So can you help us? What's been your experience, not just writing the content, like a lot of church leaders listening to this podcast, we can create content for days, right? But content that's not communicated effectively is, for lack of a better term, useless.
Right.
And so tell us what you've learned, what your experience has been like trying to capture this really important content, but packaging it in a way that like young people can digest and engage with in a way that's transformational, that's impactful for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's two ways we could take this conversation. The first one is like getting them to participate in Leadership Lab, so the recruitment side of it, and how do we use digital strategy, which, to be honest, I haven't figured out. I haven't. I have some thoughts, but the other way that we could take this that is really interesting is the formational side. So like once they're in, right, yeah, how do we utilize the digital space to help students and any age, but young people, grow in depth, grow in leadership, and how do we utilize the digital space to do that? I'd like to take it that way if you're okay with it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. So Leadership Lab, just to kind of put some meat on the bones, is a leadership development experiment. And I think that's a really important word to be using in today's day and age, is like, we're not creating another program. This is an experiment. We're going to try it out. And if it doesn't work, we're going to learn from that and move forward. And what that does is it allows folks to not get set in stone and say, well, but we've always done it this way. Because that's just not true, right? That's a side piece. Anyway. Yep. Anyway, so the way that this experiment works is we identified 20 traits of what a great leader and a great disciple look like. For instance, a great disciple engages in spiritual practices. A great disciple knows about the spiritual gifts and knows what their spiritual gifts are and are using them. Mm-hmm. A great disciple pursues mercy and justice. A great leader has grit and resilience. A great leader has relational intelligence. A great leader is adaptable and flexible when times are hard, right? And so what we did with each of those traits is we built out a curriculum, it like 3 movements. So they learn about the trait, they live it out for 30 days, and then they have a leadership project that they get to create. All of this done alongside a local church mentor that they have chosen. And so it's a combination that we use of relational, incarnational, in person, and then utilizing a digital platform to house the curriculum. And once they finish, it's like an online course that we've created for each of these traits. We call them quests. Nice. Yeah. And so once they finish a quest through the online portal, then they actually get a virtual badge. And that's how that's the tracking system that we use. And so, we're housing the content, like some of it I've written, some of it I've just curated, but the reality is like, you don't have to create new things all of the time. You can find other resources and share it. And so they learn through that portal, and then alongside their mentor, that's how they build out what a rule of life or something for 30 days. And then they do some project with it. And the cool thing about the leadership project aspect of this is like, I don't prescribe it. to them, they like do whatever comes to mind for them. And so truly the sky's the limit with what these students have done. We've had students build a website about the topic that they learned about and experienced. We had a student write an ebook and publish an ebook. We have someone who's recording a podcast right now. We had somebody who got on Canva and created a devotional that we shared at our annual conference to 1,000 people. We've got students that are like doing pulpit supply on Sunday mornings and preaching at other churches that aren't their own. And so there's all of these different ways that I wouldn't have dreamed about for them, but they get to do. And it's, I think, because of digital spaces where we've gotten to the place where we allow them to have that freedom to choose. Because the reality is a lot of like the gaming and digital spaces that they engage in are world building. You know, you think of Minecraft and other games where they world build. I think if we can take some of those gamification concepts and apply them to spiritual development, it opens up whole new worlds of possibilities, because the students themselves have the ability to make an impact in their surroundings through this method.
So again, at the risk of being repetitive, but repetition on purpose, what I'm hearing is, again, it's not digital versus in person. What you're doing is you're using digital where it makes sense, and you're also using in person where it makes sense. Because I'm just thinking, like, if this was confined to a Sunday after church youth group or Bible study, well, baseball tournament, soccer game, sick, if they're not in the room, then all of a sudden they miss the whole thing. Whereas with Leadership Lab, you are leveraging digital, but at the same time creating in-person experiences that are better off because of the digital. Is that a fair way to assess that?
Yeah, and you can lean into asynchronous, and you can lean in. Asynchronous learning is like amazing tool when you think about how busy everyone is. They can do it on their own time. It takes away any pressure on me as a leader to like have these weird numbers games. Like I don't focus on that, because I'm focused on depth and like fostering relationships. And so, I mean, when you think about a typical youth ministry or children's ministry, you're like, if any youth ministers or pastors are listening here, they're going to laugh. Like, volunteer recruitment can be so difficult in a programmatic sense. But if you lean into a relational sense where a student is asking one adult to be their mentor, like all of a sudden you have a 1-to-1 ratio. Right. There has been no student that has had a problem with finding a mentor. And if that ever arises in this experiment, I actually have a long list of adults who have offered to be a mentor.
And that's amazing. So it's digital that's building, it's digital is leading to like real in-person relationships.
That's right. That's right.
And so you mentioned you're in Kansas City. Where are these students located? Are they local, or some of them far away? Like, how distributed is this group of students that you've worked with?
Yeah, so this experiment is reserved specifically for the states of Kansas and Nebraska. I've got some exciting things happening that will expand that opportunity, hopefully in the future. But for now, we've got students in Kansas City that are doing it, that are part of numerous different churches, all the way to West Kansas up into Nebraska, all over those areas. We've got students, and we started this about 3 years ago with 2 students. Maybe 4 years ago, we started dreaming about this. It was during lockdown, and we had 2 students, and today we've got 29.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's, in good interviewer form, I asked a question that I had a feeling where the answer was going, but like the point that's running through my head is you have 29 students that if you were just confined to one room and one space, they wouldn't be able to participate.
That's right.
So you're expanding the reach.
That's right.
And honestly fitting into the realities of today's culture, in that you might be able to get 29 students for a weekend retreat, for a pilgrimage, the occasional in-person experience, but you're not going to get them weekly. But this allows you to build and connect in a weekly-ish way
Yeah.
with kids that don't live close to each other.
Well, and what's so fun about this model, you're absolutely right. And there are touch points for us to get together. We've got a couple of retreats that are always optional because we know how, students are. Like if they can't come to this, it's not like they get kicked out of leadership lab or whatever. So they have opportunities for in person. And I will say this, there are some students who have chosen, in this experiment, we give badges for other things including the online format, some of the in-person service opportunities. We've got some pop-up, side quests is what we call them, where they're able to serve in a specific capacity and they get a badge for that too. We've had some students that lean into only doing the in-person, and we've had some students who have only done the online curriculum. And so this creates an opportunity for folks to create their own experiences, make their own impact in the world and in their lives, connect on different and asynchronous levels, and engage in person. So it's a combination of all of these things. And it allows folks across the geography to be involved. And what's really cool about this is we're seeing a couple of models pop up. It started off with individual students from smaller churches that did not have youth group because it was like they're the only student, right? Or maybe there's one or two, but they wanted to be involved and they were a leader. And so we've been able to offer up some, age specific types of ministry for students that otherwise wouldn't have had that opportunity. And we also have in some larger churches, like cohorts from a youth group, like a group of students that are the leaders in the student youth group, participate together as kind of a cohort. So we've seen some different models emerge, and it's been really fun to kind of figure out okay, so how do we navigate all of these different, group dynamics?
Yeah, there's a theme so far we're trying to think about how do we use digital media as the church to reach and influence and impact and disciple young people. It's that in person and digital it shouldn't be a competition. It should be a both and. And I want to move into some practical things in terms of how do churches actually do this. But first, quick left turn, because I remember a story you told me about a student and using AI. And just to be clear, you and I use AI all the time. Yeah. I think AI, I gave a workshop on why church leaders should be using AI. But Justin Herman from Mariners was on the church, and I like his on this podcast. I like his language. He said you can use AI foolishly or faithfully, and so that's the responsibility of us to make sure we're using it faithfully. All of that, no, you're good. All of that is to say, tell us a story, because and let me know if you don't remember the story, but you were working with a student and you mentioned using AI, and the student's reaction wasn't what I expected. Tell that story.
No, not at all. So, in United Methodist Circles, we have something called Annual Conference, and that's our annual gathering of clergy and lay representatives from every single church in our geographic region. So 700-ish clergy, 700-ish laity, and there's a cohort of students that I'm in charge of mobilizing and connecting with during this time. So it's the youth block is what we call it. And I was talking with our leadership lab president about how are we going to do orientation for these students. Some people know each other, some people don't. And one of the things that we do at annual conference is a legislative process, very similar to our legislative body in the US. And so we have resolutions that come forward and we engage in Robert's Rules of Order. It's very fascinating and appealing to some and not appealing to others. So one of the things that we wanted to do for our orientation for students was to give a general overview of Robert's Rules of Order and then practice with a mock resolution. And so as I was talking with the student who at the time was a sophomore, I asked them, I was like, okay, well, would you be willing to like do the training for the Robert's Rules of Order? And I'll just like put, generate some mock resolution through Chat GPT real fast, and then we can utilize that. And this student could not have rolled their eyes in the back of their head further. They were like, please don't use AI. Please don't use Chat GPT. I will write something instead if you don't have time, but do not use AI. And so they ended up writing an amazing mock resolution, about how every time the bishop walks through the door, that his walk-in song is Enter Sandman by Metallica. So then we engaged in Robert's Rules of Order. We had somebody debating whether or not we had the budget for the copyright for the music trade, all of that. And then somebody offered to, change the song to Ready for It by Taylor Swift. It was a whole fun thing. But the point that you wanted me to get to was that this student really was not a fan of AI. And I dug further because I hadn't seen any young person have that expression and reaction before. But the more I dig in, the more I see it. Young people know the impacts, the environmental impacts of AI and the political, corporate, all of that stuff. It is a nuanced discussion, and I think it is worth, doing some research into, the use of AI. And just know that not every technological advancement is going to be seen by the younger generation as a given and good, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got some critical thinkers out there. Gen Z is known for their activism. They're known as a generation for, they give percentage wise more than millennials do. They serve in, maybe not necessarily in churches, but they are doing service work more than boomers are. These Gen Z folks are engaged. They are informed and they're engaged and they've got opinions. And so, it's worth keeping that in mind. It's worth asking them what their thoughts are. And it's also worth, as the church is engaging in digital spaces with young people, we actually need to care about what they care about. And if students care about the environment, scripture has something to say about that too. That's literally the commandment in Genesis 1 is to be stewards of creation, right? So what does it mean to lean into, what our faith has to say about some of the social issues that Gen Z cares about?
I just think that's such a cool story, and I appreciate you sharing that, because if we're going to reach people, we're going to reach young people, we would do very well for ourselves to understand what they care about 100%. And why they care about it. And the other thing that comes to mind too is it's this whole concept of digital being an extension of, not a tool or a replacement of. And what that made me think of too is digital is essential, but as an extension, it's not young people or other people want just AI slop content.
That's right.
It's this person's A, what is the impact on the environment? I care about that. And B, I don't need some generated stuff that's not real, that's not human. By all means, use digital to distribute that to me, right. But don't use an AI to create content that's not from a human. It feels like there's an element of, as the church, we need to be real humans.
That's right.
that are living into digital spaces, not just throwing stuff out there because we're supposed to be there.
That's right. And I think the more people start to use AI, the more it becomes very obvious to me when someone is using AI. And so if that's something if you're generating captions with AI, I know you're going to use a lot of emojis for your bullet points. I know these things. I also know, though, that the Oxford comma is a telltale sign for some people. And I would just like to say, as someone who cares about grammar, that's not always true, because I use the Oxford comma because it's grammatically correct. And the rule of three, right? Like explaining thing in three concepts, like those things are just, that's also just called good writing. But there's like a human vibe to it in the same
Yeah.
way that like, you know, AI art, you can tell.
Yeah.
And I think when you're thinking about, digital as an extension of self, if it doesn't seem authentic, then that says something about the self, right? Like, and so there is a level of authenticity that needs to come. And if you choose to continue to use AI, I would highly recommend like adding a human touch to it for its final form. Like this shouldn't take away all of the work forever for you. And the reality is, if that's how you use it, then they themselves could get on Chat GPT and ask faith questions. So what is it that your faith community is offering that Chat can't?
That's a great question. That's a great question and a great framework. So talking about, it's a good segue to where we can go next in terms of how churches are using digital media. And so I just, you have such a fascinating seat and perspective in your work, because you're working with young people directly and you're also working with church leaders directly.
Yeah.
So here's the question. We can go either lane here, but in your experience, and this is from a posture of learning. It's not a posture of judging, and you're not going to name names and stuff like that. But generally speaking,
Yes, I am. No, I'm just
here it comes. Where do you see choose your own adventure here? Where do you see church leaders either A, getting digital media right, or B, where do you see church leaders getting digital media wrong?
Yeah. I'm not going to name names. I do think that there, again, is a level of authenticity. And so if you're on TikTok and you try a trend that doesn't, like, that's not authentic to you, that's like, you can kind of see through that, right? I think ministry leaders are doing it well when they are themselves and they have something to offer to the conversation, like this parasocial conversation that happens on social media. I think ministry leaders who have something to say in their sermons about what is actually happening in the world, and then they repurpose their sermons into content on social, are doing it well. I think I will say this. There are like the church accounts, and then there's your personal accounts. And this is true for like my side gig, Dandelion Marketplace, and other, like even with Sacred Roots. The more you see a human face and the more you hear a human voice and perspective, the better the engagement is.
Yeah.
And so like, it's fine to every now and then have some posts that are like advertising, but the more you can offer content from a real human perspective, that's actually going to impact their lives in a positive way, that content does really, really well. So you're either contributing to some parasocial discourse that exists. And so that's some like timely stuff. Maybe that's where you do some silly trends or whatever. And I'm speaking just for myself. That's how I engage on TikTok. Is like, if there's this big conversation that's happening, I'm going to say, here's my voice in that conversation. And sometimes it flops and sometimes it's great, right? And then for the other times, it's like, what is the nugget here that I can offer? For instance, Sacred Roots, we've got this embodied prayer. And every time we share this, like how to do an embodied prayer with your little, that's like has the best engagement, because it's something that a parent or a caregiver can take from that and try right away. And so I would say those are some of the spaces where I see ministry leaders doing it well. Is like, you're offering some sort of value, you're contributing to the discourse, and you're authentic.
So it's not a scramble just to say something for the sake of saying something or to do something for the sake of doing something. It's where can I bring value to this conversation?
Yeah.
And then doing that as an extension of who I am, not a posture or a performance that just doesn't add up, because young people are going to see right through that.
Yeah.
They're going to see right through that really quick.
Right. Right. They will. Do like everybody can see through it on some level, you know.
Yep.
It's the authenticity piece that, like, I don't know. I just think of youth ministry. It's like there's this kind of misunderstanding that, like, you got to have the young college aged, person to do youth ministry in order for it to be successful. That's just not true. You need somebody who cares about students. You need somebody who's willing to invest in relationship, and you need somebody who is like being who they authentically are and living into that. And that's true for the digital space as well.
Absolutely. So let's think about your experience here, because you wear a lot of hats. You do stuff. You have your day job. You're a wife, a mom, and you are part of Sacred Roots. You built Dandelion Marketplace from scratch. I know that you're a published author, and you speak and you consult. So for the church leader that's thinking, I know I need to do more digital media, but I don't know, how do I find the time? Like, how do you, and I also know, just as your friend, I know that you're also serious about boundaries. Like, you're not a grinded out 100-hour a week person at all. So, like, and this is just your experience too. So it's not like you're prescribing this. I just want you to describe how you think about balancing it all. And so, like, what does it look like for you? Like, as you were starting, let's use Dandelion as an example. As you were starting Dandelion from scratch, knowing which, like, how did you pull that off? How did you go from zero to something that's out in the world serving church leaders and serving people?
Yeah. So digital media wise, the whole, for Dandelion Marketplace, the whole business model is online. And so you gotta invest in online, right? And I had connections already. I knew people were creating content, and I knew that they needed a place to be able to sell it. And I knew other people needed a place to find it. And so I started again with incarnational relationships, building those, spreading word, kind of grassroots. And then as momentum started to build, that's when you came on, and helped build the website. Thank you. I started to increase social media, and I did that. I found that Instagram is the place for Dandelion Marketplace. I have Facebook. It doesn't perform at all. Like, hardcore. I have it, and I like cross post, but I don't pay attention to that. And so this is the part where, like, the boundaries come in. I found the niche. I found the place, the platform that worked best for me in that time, and I invested in that. And then I did a lot of batch creation. So, like, I just live on Canva some days, and I don't like schedule a lot of posts, like daily. I've got my kind of like my scheduler. And to be honest, I'm not as consistent as I should be, but when I do batch, that's how I do it, is I batch the content. And then, I leave room for times when I'm going to show my face, because there's a lot of parasocial discussions happening right now. And so those are the posts that do well, are almost really those like more sporadic ones, but you do have to have a consistent presence in order for the algorithm to pick you up. Right. And so you just kind of have to grind it out a little bit sometimes, and batch work, and get smart with that, come up with templates, rinse, repeat as much as you can, and find the platform that's going to work for you. Personally, I like TikTok the best. I think it's more fun. And for me, I see it as part of my job as someone who resources kids and youth ministries to know about that space. And so I spend time on TikTok. And I see it as work. And sometimes I do it in my free time just for fun too. And I pick up on trends that way. I study TikTok, um, as part of my job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I think is cool about that is you had an idea that you wanted to use to serve the church, to advance the kingdom, but you didn't say, okay, how do I do all of this myself?
Mm-mm.
You said, who do I know that has experience? Who do I know, whether it's friends, contractors? You started with who can you reach out to help
Yeah.
and help you go further, faster. And then what I also heard is you paid attention and you prioritized
Yeah.
because you don't want to be everywhere all the time. You want to be where it makes the most sense for you, in this case with Dandelion.
That's right.
You're leveraging relationships, so you're not trying to do everything yourself. I'm thinking about church leaders that are wearing 17 hats, don't have time for everything.
Nope.
Is there a volunteer? Is there, a church down the street? Because, we're not competing. We're all in this together.
Mm-hmm.
And so where can you learn? And then where do you focus with what makes sense? Because you don't have to be everywhere. You should be where it makes sense for what your mission is.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Relationships and then prioritization?
Yeah, I think that's right. And a couple of pieces here, just to note, like Instagram for Dandelion is like ministry leaders, right? That's where the ministry leaders are. I don't often engage with young people on Instagram. And I will point out, there are some safety things that you want to keep in mind and just be wise about how you engage on social media platforms with students.
Mm-hmm.
Really want to make sure that you're above board and that you're not in you're not in the DMs, you're not in,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff needs to stay off limits, just for the sake of safety for everyone. But yeah, so you want to keep that in mind too. Like social media is one of those places where, like in the same way you're not going to be in a private room with a student with the closed door, you're not going to be in the DMs too.
That's a good word. That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Just couple more questions, and then unless we think of others that other rabbit trails we want to follow is. So let's talk. You've mentioned a couple of them so far, but let's talk tools. What are you using to host Leadership Lab?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Canva. You mentioned scheduling, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that either for your day job or for your family, you don't have this huge, massive budget to pay for all these tools. So, what tools are you using on a weekly basis to create content and get it out into the world?
Yeah. So I use Meta because it's free. To schedule for Instagram and Facebook. We use an e-learning platform called Absorb for the e-courses that we've got for Leadership Lab. But I'll tell you, the majority of my time is spent in a Google Drive, which is also free, right? Google folders. Yep. That's where I keep all of the content in Google Docs just in case something weird happens. So it's good to have backups. Keep that in mind. That's also any time that I'm batch scheduling or batch thinking about posts. I'm going to have a spreadsheet with the captions so I can copy and paste and do it real fast. So there's some work that you do ahead of the scheduling to make your life easier and faster. Once you start scheduling, I use Canva for design. You can create a brand kit that's really important. So you can change your fonts, your colors, you can upload your icons, and then you can literally create templates and then just copy them in, and then you can click brand colors and it changes all of the templates to your brand colors. It's brilliant. Never create something from scratch in Canva. Always templates. So it's Drive, it's Canva, it's Meta, Absorb. There's you got to pay for that. And then for email lists, I think it's important as you're continuing to do communications. I use MailChimp. I know that there's other platforms out there that other folks use and prefer. You got your web host, website, builder, all that good stuff. So that's about it.
No, that's really helpful. I appreciate you sharing all the tools you're using. I thought of a pop-up question before we land with the last one. How do you think about AI and how do you use AI? Because I know you're you're very socially conscious,
Mm-hmm.
you really care,
Mm-hmm.
and also it's a unbelievably powerful tool. So again, not in a prescribing sense, but just how do you think about and use AI?
That's a great question. And I will say, since my conversation with that student, I've used AI significantly less. Um, I have started to use it less and less for scheduling and generating captions, especially with Dandelion. And I've seen that it's actually easier sometimes for me to just take the picture and like write something real quick than to like think of all of the parameters that I want to have to create for the AI to work in my favor. So
Mm-hmm.
I've started to realize that sometimes the tools, the ways that I was using it in order to generate captions actually did take longer. It took less brain power, but it did take longer. And so I've started to kind of negotiate with myself, okay, is this worth my time or my like brain power? Which one? Because that's kind of what it comes down to sometimes for me. I use AI significantly less. And so I cannot remember the last time I used it. Yeah, I don't use it very much anymore. And it's because of the way that the student introduced me to the environmental impacts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not here to say that I never use it or I will never use it again. But if I'm going to use it, I want it to have the most impact
Mm-hmm.
it can have. And I want to think about whether or not it's worth a couple of bottles of water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you miss it?
not really. I really don't. It's
Yeah.
I will say this, AI is integrated in so much, right? I mean, our algorithms are AI. If you're going to Google search something, AI pops up first now, right? And so it's not something that's escapable. It's going to happen. And so when I talk about how I use AI sparingly, it's the generative AI like ChatGPT and others that I haven't used since I think I planned my girls' trip with my sister 2 years ago, like or a year ago. So yeah, so I use it significantly less. I have used it for really great things, like I wrote a grant application that got me $7,000 to be able to do more ministry. So like it can have some really 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 positive impacts, and it's worth us considering the environmental impact as well.
Yeah, I love that you're asking the question and you're thinking through, and AI can do a lot, but should it do this for me?
Yeah.
Do I need this to do it for me? I mean, I'm thinking about, let's say I'm on a deadline. Like I have a meeting with a congregant in an hour. I've got to get this website copy
Yeah.
updated. So like in that sense, there's a time crunch, there's a need.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, AI, here's what I'm trying to say. Write this in 75 words because I need to walk out the door in 10 minutes and this has to be done before I leave.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like a need. That feels like something where you're being strategic with your time and your energy to go invest in a person
Right.
over a conversation. Whereas, am I just being intellectually lazy?
That's right. And I think there's something inherently human about being creative. And
Yeah.
if we outsource our creativity, we're losing a part of, I think, of what God created us to be. And
Yeah.
we are created in God's image. And the first thing that we learn about God is that God creates.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is something inherently sacred about the art that we create, the music that we create, the drawings that we create, all of this is like the stories that we create. All of this is like part of being human. And so I wonder about how could we utilize the tools at our disposal to free us up to be able to create more instead of using it to create, right?
Yep. How can AI, where does AI make sense and where does it not make sense to make digital media an extension of who we are? Because if AI is trying to replace who we are, then it's no longer an extension.
That's right.
It's no longer authentic.
That's right.
Awesome. So here's kind of last question to bring us home, and it's a fairly big one, but I'm excited to hear what you think. And here's the question: if you could wave a magic wand and have every church do one thing well
Mm,
digitally when it comes to kids, youth, and young adults, what would that one thing be?
Matt. One thing well, digitally.
Or a couple, yeah. What if you could wave a magic wand and have every church do one thing or a few things well digitally when they're trying to reach younger people,
Mhm.
what would that be?
For me, I think the biggest takeaway is a shift in mindset away from seeing the digital aspects as either not as important or way more important.
Hmm.
So it's a shift in mindset that allows a ministry to invest in a proportionate way to the digital space and to see that as ministry itself and not just like, oh, an extra thing that we got to do, but that it's that important. But it's not more important than incarnational with students.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, for having
I
me.
appreciate all the work that you're doing. It's cool, and there's more. Again, I'm your friend, so I know there's more coming. And so, yeah, I just appreciate what you're doing. Thanks for sharing your insights in terms of how you balance it all, how you think about digital media, what young people are doing. I think it's really important for the church to. I guess as we're wrapping up, one thing you've said a couple of times, and I just want to end with this is like, what do young people think? What do they care about?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we keep that front and center as the church as we're trying to reach them in digital spaces? I think that's really a beautiful insight, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. And just a reminder that not all young people think the same, right? And so that's why it's
Yep.
so important to get to know the students in your area and in your neighborhood and then listening to them and letting them lead and really, freedom giving ways, life giving ways. And they will surprise you and they will inspire you and they will humble you.
Yep.
It is like always worth it. It is so worth it to invest in young people in all of the different ways that you can, because they are the church now. Don't be saying that they're the future of the church. They are the church now. And they have beautiful ways of seeing how the church could embody Christ's love in their communities.
Amen. Perfect place to end. So thank you for listening to another episode of Social Media Church. We'll have the descriptions up in the show notes updated so that you can find links to Melissa and all the different things that she's doing. If you found this episode helpful, share it with somebody, hit subscribe, join our email list so you get notifications on future episodes. And if you have ideas for what you want us to talk about in the future, send us a note. You can get all the contact information in the future. So Melissa, I know I appreciate this conversation. You make me better every time we talk, and this won't be the last time that you and I hit record on this podcast. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Matt.